Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of General Geekery. I am Brian, and with me, as always, is JD.
Hello.
I point this way because on my screen, JD is like right here, but he's probably like right here on the video.
Actually, no, on my screen, you're pointing at me. So when you do that, yeah.
So yeah, see, we're getting the hang of this. Not real quick, but first of all, we'd like to thank everybody, the like over 600 people that tuned in to watch our episode with Marauder John and his Vietnam Kickstarter.
600 people heard us talk now on the internet.
I haven't checked.
There's definitely a bunch of people that listen to that probably never listened to our show before. Will probably never listen again, and that's okay because we got them for one episode.
Oh, they'll listen to this one because just as important as Marauder John is to the community, so are the gentlemen that are with us today. Today we have Troy Mckee. Let's see if this is working. I'm pointing to Troy Mckee. And John, I don't actually know your last name.
Kukovic.
Say that again for me.
Kukovic.
Kukovic. All right.
I just wasn't going to try to pronounce it.
I blame you.
Oh no, I hope people listen to this. But the shows that just Brian and I do, I don't care if they actually listen to those or not. So
yeah, probably not.
But I do appreciate everybody who did listen in on that episode, and everybody who regularly does listen to us. So
absolutely. And I've been back in the GI Joe community for quite a while, and anybody that has been in the community for quite a long time knows Troy's name. Troy is a big name in the collecting community.
I've been around for a long time.
Troy actually doesn't live too far from where I do, and we actually got together probably about 2006, 2007 for Colorado.
That was a long time ago.
It was
but yeah, we did down in Colorado Springs. I remember that.
Yeah, I think it was at the Hooters, wasn't it?
It was at the Citadel Mall.
Yes. Yeah. So Troy, for those that don't know you, which is probably like two people watching this episode, tell us a little bit about yourself and your like collecting history and what you do. And
sure. So I'm Troy Mckee. I'm a freelance figure designer, and I've worked on a whole host of product lines. I've worked on GI Joe, Transformers, Star Wars, Marvel. Now my brand that I'm doing the most work for currently right now is Marauder. I did all the design work on the World War II and on the Vietnam Kickstarters for them. And John's been very, very good to keep me busy. I've also worked on Action Force and Dime Novel Legends. And, I'm a pretty good fill-in. I'm one of those jack of all trades, master of none. So, I do a little bit of different stuff for different people, sometimes packaging, sometimes the figure design, sometimes deco, just kind of whatever comes up. As far as collecting goes, I'm obviously a big GI Joe guy. My two big brands are GI Joe and Mask. Those ever since I was a kid. And I was born in '83, so sometimes I'm a little young on the Joe side of things for some folks. I was getting my first figures around '86, and I loved it. I loved Joe as a brand. Same thing with Mask. I loved it, but Mask went away, fairly quickly. Yeah. Whereas Joe stuck around, and people tell those stories about, oh well, when I was a teenager, I kind of got out of it. For me, when I hit teenager, GI Joe went away.
Right.
Like I didn't choose to get out of GI Joe. GI Joe just stopped being at retail. Right. And I continued to go to Mile High Flea Market in Denver when figures were $1 a piece, and all through when I was a teenager, I was buying used Joes. And then around 2000, well, I guess just before then, I started playing with customizing, but around 2002, 2003, when I went to college, I found out there were other customizers out online. Mm-hmm. And I got hooked up with Joe Customs.
Yep.
And that was where my life kind of spiraled out of control. And that there were other like-minded people that were making custom GI Joes, and it was a big deal. And I was at Joe Customs for many years, and I was on staff for a while. I helped on the wiki, and I just kind of banged around there for a while. And it was one of those things where I just kept doing it and doing it and doing it. And eventually it kind of spiraled into paying work.
Fantastic.
Yeah. And it was, I mean, it's amazing. And I mean, the stars kind of aligned to make that happen. It was, you know, I couldn't do it again if I tried,
Right.
but, you know, that's kind of my background. So, I mean, I've been doing Joe forever. And then I went to my first JoeCon in 2004. And that just became a staple for me. And we made it a family vacation every year. And I did it for 15 years, right up until that convention ended. And that's where I got to know everybody.
Yeah.
And now, you know, John will attest, when I go to a Joe show, I spend, you know, about 5 minutes with each person because I know everybody. And it's just, I only have a very short amount of time where I can talk to a particular person before I have to go talk to somebody else. So, but yeah, it's, I've been around the G.I. Joe community. We'll just put it that way.
Yeah, absolutely. I think probably for me, one of the coolest things when I got my Kickstarter for Boss Fight, the first Boss Fight figures, and I look at the package and it says packaging by Troy Mckee. I'm like, hey, I know that guy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
All right, John, this is my first time meeting you, so thank you for joining us on the show. Tell us a little bit about yourself, please.
Thanks for having me. Like I said, my name is John Kukovich. I've been a G.I. Joe fan like since it started, right? I was into Star Wars and all that kind of stuff when I was a kid. I had big plans of being like a automotive designer, and that didn't work out. So I thought, well, I'll get into boats. I started working for a boat factory, and I've worked for them since I was 18. So I have worked for them over 30 years, and it's Bass Pro. I work for the manufacturing arm of Bass Pro.
Nice.
And I have done every part of fiberglass boat building that you could be a part of. I've laminated hulls, I've built molds, done research and development work. Most of the time I'm a project leader or just doing new product development in general. And like I said, I've been doing that for a long time.
So if you could build a life-size Cobra Moray if you wanted to.
Yes, I could. Yes, I could. If I had the space,
like
absolutely.
Got the plans for that.
Yeah, I would happily assist in a project to do that. I think that would be pretty awesome. Several of the projects that we've worked on over the years, testing new modeling software. That's the kind of stuff I'll do. I'll do a G.I. Joe type aircraft or a boat or something just to say like, well, it can do these kinds of surfaces, so I guess it'll work.
Nice.
But yeah, when I was a kid, I bought Breaker. A kid down the street got a bunch of G.I. Joes for his birthday, and I was in, so I bought Breaker, realized I had to have Flash, and then it just went out of control from there. I collected them. I was a teenager. I tell this story several times. I was dating my wife, and we went to the mall in Kansas City, and it was like this was supposed to be this big date, and I had been paid. And I walk in, and the wave at Toys R Us, the wave that included Rampart, there were a bunch of figures that year that came out, and Toys R Us had every one of them on the wall. So I went over to her and I said, listen, I know what we're supposed to be doing today, but I'm not leaving here without that stuff. So we ended up, like, on the way home, we stopped at McDonald's and got a bucket of chicken nuggets and some sodas, and that was the end of that. And she married me anyway. So
I was gonna say, she married you anyways.
So even though now she thinks it's pretty out of control, I'm like, you were there. You were there.
Yeah, you saw this when it started. You had a chance to jump off, but you didn't. Yeah, my wife was kind of the same way. So
yeah, so a few years ago, I was working on. I had found a picture of the Cobra. I think it's called the Inceptor, which was going to be a spaceship for the G.I. Joe line, and it got canceled. And I saw an auction for one of the prototypes, and there were 2 decent pictures there of it. And I thought I would just test my 3D modeling skills. And so I did a 3D model of that plane, and I took it to JoeCon, the last JoeCon, and that's when I met Troy, I believe, was that year. And
I remember that booth. That was awesome. I kept staring at it saying, if I didn't already like Star Brigade, this would make me like it.
It got mixed reviews. There were some people that were pretty happy to see it, some people that weren't very happy to see it.
Well, some people aren't very happy with things in life in general.
Yeah.
And some
that is
people
true.
really enjoy things in life in general.
That is true.
Like Star Brigade. I'm the world's only fan of Rip It. I cannot tell you how excited I am that there's a new Rip It figure with a new history. Most people are like, oh no, just another repaint. I'm like, ooh, just another Rip It. I didn't think that would ever happen.
You're looking at the president, the creator, president, CEO, CFO, and only member of the Rip It fan club right here.
Yes.
All right.
All right. I too never outgrew G.I. Joe. Those few years that it wasn't in the stores, that was okay because there were stores like Odds and Ends where you could still go back and get some of this stuff. And then I was there when I was working at Sears in 1997. There was a Toys R Us in the same shopping center. On my lunch break one day, I walked over there and came back to Sears. I was a senior in high school. I came back to my job with a bag from Toys R Us, which contained the Cobra 3-pack of Blue Baroness, Blue Cobra Commander, and Mahogany Destro. So I never outgrew it. I didn't care. My girlfriend at the time didn't care. And I wasn't particularly concerned with it. It was one of those, I never outgrew it. So even my dad now sometimes says, some things just never change. I'm like, it's your fault. You bought me rock and roll when I was 3 years old. It's your fault. So,
yeah. So as you can tell from the history of these guys, there's a lot of creativity and a lot of design history between these two. So that kind of is obvious where we're going with this. You guys have a product coming up soon, don't you?
We do. We've got our own line in development. So
yeah, I'm very excited about this.
Fantastic. Tell us a little bit about it, please.
Sure. John, do you want to talk about the opening in the market?
The opening in the market,
you want to talk about what's missing from the market?
Yeah, there seems to be the availability of everything you could possibly want as long as you don't want O-rings.
Exactly.
I mean, we can get astronauts, you can get all kinds of stuff, but I mean, here behind me on the shelf is a whole bunch of different styles of O-ring figures, and I love them. Even back to Micronauts, people don't realize that G.I. Joe wasn't the first O-ring, that Micronauts had an O-ring figure in 1972.
Oh, I didn't know that.
So, it's been around, so I love O-ring figures, and I really feel like it's something that right now a lot of collectors say, hey, we need this, we want this. And we started talking about it. I said, this is something I want to do because I think it's missing. I think O-rings are fun. I think they may not be the most realistic and most posable things in the world, but for somebody that grew up on Star Wars and adventure people, G.I. Joe the O-ring design was something special.
Absolutely.
And it worked because they got ripped off by Leonard and Remco.
That's right.
So clearly the formula was working.
Yeah. And that, there is something about an O-ring figure, and I love modern figures. Don't get me wrong. Obviously, I work on a lot of modern figures. Like I love modern figures. They do things that O-ring figures don't. But there is something about an O-ring figure. Something, and I don't know if it's just the rush of nostalgia when you hold one, or the proportions when you look at them. There is something about that makes me happy. Like on a very kind of gut level, right? And it's not, looking at them, I get, it's not the most detailed thing ever. It's not the most posable thing ever, but it's still, there is something about it that just kind of speaks to guys in our age range that ever had them as a kid.
Yeah. They're magical.
They are. And, nobody else has, or at least when we started, kind of pushing this, that kind of aesthetic. And we started talking about what, if we wanted to do O-ring, what did we want to do? And we want something that feels very vintage. Now, we can't do everything exactly as they did it in the 80s, but we kind of agreed that we wanted whatever we made to look and feel like it fit with vintage figures you had from the 80s, be those, Joes or Core Figures or any of the multitude of brands that Rimco or Galoob sold under. Because there are a
too,
bunch.
that's right.
We've been looking at all kinds of stuff, to try and see how people were saving money back in the day on different things. But there's just something about them, and we want a product that looks like it fits with those and feels like it fits with those. So that we decided was the opening in the market.
Absolutely. I was going to say, I see on like announcements for upcoming GI Joe products, there is definitely, man, I would say at least a quarter to 50% of those posts are like O-rings. Need to be O-rings. Where are the O-ring figures? Where are the O-ring figures? Why are the retro figures not O-ring figures?
Sure.
And you see people like Black Major and Red Laser that are doing the kind of knockoff GI Joe figures, and those, they sell out in minutes. I've got a shitload of the Night Vipers sitting right behind me. I mean, yeah, they're not the best figures, like you said, because it doesn't have the posability, it doesn't have the detail, but there's something about having that vintage style figure that it's like one of my customs production, and it's like this is awesome. So you guys have an O-ring line coming up. So what is the theme of your line then?
So the brand we've got that we're leading with is called Callsign Longbow, and it's actually a Cold War based line, and it's kind of an alternate history kind of thing starting in the mid 80s. Because we talk about the nostalgia piece, right? And okay, so we love the look of the old figures, but we also really love the time frame of those old figures when we were a kid, and this kind of Cold War story where it was the East versus the West, and some of the great movies and things in the 80s, like we've said before, we're using Top Gun as reference, we're using Red Dawn as reference, right? We're trying to hit all of these things that guys our age know and love, right? And we get the opportunity in hindsight to do things that maybe with G.I. Joe, Hasbro couldn't do in the 80s. They were very specific to try and avoid the Soviet Union because they didn't want any issues. For us, that's not a problem. That country literally doesn't exist anymore. Exactly. We can make the Soviets the bad guys. Nobody from the Soviet embassy is going to call us up and complain about something or try and sue us. That's not, that country isn't there anymore. Exactly. So that allows us to do that. And it allows us to bring in some really fun tropes from those 80s action movies. Dude blows somebody up and then has a cool one-liner like Arnold Schwarzenegger did in all those movies in the 80s, right? We can do that. We can
just thinking of Red Heat.
Yeah, we can have fun with this, and it's a great outlet for us design-wise, because the other conversation that we get to have simultaneously about putting this together and how we want it to look is we get to say, okay, well, we loved that stuff in the 80s, those O-ring figures, and we loved the vehicles and things that came with them, but what didn't we get that we always wanted? Which I think on the design side of things is the most exciting kind of aspect of it, because John and I have lots of long conversations about, hey, what thing didn't we get that we really want to have? And how can we figure out a way to make that work? So, it's like I said, Longbow is this great Cold War kind of alternate history take about an American covert operations force whose job essentially is to mess with the Soviets. Wherever the Soviets are trying to expand influence, they're there to, muck it up.
I feel like Gung Ho would approve of this.
Absolutely. And these aren't just straight O-ring figures either. I mean, we're not getting just a Xerox of what Hasbro and all the other companies put out. You guys have put in some really interesting design elements into these figures.
Yeah. And we knew anything we did had to be all new, right? Like, we're not making bootlegs. We're trying to develop a brand. We want to make something new. I love G.I. Joe, and Longbow is not G.I. Joe. don't get me wrong, there's some G.I. Joe influence in there.
It's compatible, yes.
Yeah,
there's a tad bit of influence there.
Yeah, it is compatible though, right? And but we do want to do something new. We want to tell different stories. And that, just kind of led to that. But yeah, we knew, because we've had people ask, they're like, hey, can't you just remake this stuff? And it's like, that's not what this project is.
I was gonna say, that's not your goal. Your goal is to create something new that we can use alongside
exactly
the things that we grew up on. You're trying to establish something new. You don't want, and you know what? I'm excited because you're not retreading anything that's already been done.
Yeah.
You're giving us toys that if we want to make them part of our G.I. Joe universe, we can fill in some gaps with, or you want something that can stand on its own and isn't a brand or a franchise that has a history. And I love that.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I'll be sure and do is we'll put links to all of the social media stuff. So I know you've got a Facebook group. If you have an Instagram or a website or anything, be sure and PM that to me when we get done with the show, and I'll put them in the show notes.
We will. And we are working. It's not, we have a placeholder website right now that people have seen. We are, one of the reasons why we haven't been maybe showing as much as we were before Joe Fest is we are working on a new website, like an actual website with different pages and like, there's just so many hours in a day. We are developing on that end of things too. And we're hoping to be able to share some more of the story elements and some more of the backgrounds on some of the characters and stuff that way. So
fantastic. Yeah, I know this. People are going to watch this and they're going to be like, well, when is this going? Is this going to interfere with my Marauder Vietnam stuff? But you guys are looking to launch your Kickstarter probably about springish. Is that what I'm getting?
Yeah, we'd really like to shoot mid-February, early March of 2022.
Okay.
And right now that's a kind of a fuzzy target just based on, some last minute stuff we need to get worked out with our factory.
Right.
We're definitely shooting for an early 2022 Kickstarter, and then it'll be like a traditional Kickstarter. You'll assume another year to 18 months to get your figures in hand. But that's, we're hoping most of the logistical issues will be figured out by then. A lot of Kickstarters trying to fulfill right now with COVID, like there's just, hang-ups on the factory side that you can't do anything about. And that's frustrating because we know the factories are trying, their hardest to get caught up on stuff, and there's nothing you can do from here. But it is one of those things. So I just want people to be aware that it'll be a standard Kickstarter with the same kind of risks as a normal Kickstarter. But no matter how long it takes, we'll make sure we get there. So
you're hoping to have like half dozen figures with some stretch goals. Is that kind of the plan right now?
Yeah, we're thinking 4 to fund, and then everything else will be stretch goals. And we have around 20-ish figures that if we got through everything, right? And some of those are redecos. We're going to be try and be real efficient in our tool use.
Yeah.
One thing you will notice with some of our figures is sometimes the arms or legs get reused, but a new torso and head. And that's just, to justify the tooling costs, you have to
say that's how it has to get done.
Yeah.
I think,
and it's just one of those things.
Yeah. One of the brands out there that I've recently started collecting in the last couple of years is Joy Toy, and they have like one nail buck, and it's just paint jobs and a new head, and they're a gear, and it's a different figure every time. So I mean, I think I used to get hung up on that until I saw what creative minds can actually do with.
Yeah, it's amazing what a fresh coat of paint on old tooling can do.
Yeah, and I'm a big deco guy. Deco is one of the things that I kind of specialize in, and what we've tried to do when we have to redeco a figure is we try not to do a palette swap, right? Where it's the same thing just in different colors. We try really hard. Listen, if we're going to do this guy again, it's got to be like a different camo, or we got to do something more interesting visually with it. And just
like the random repaints in 1993 of 1992 figures that Hasbro did, like wetsuit with the orange instead of the yellow, or barricade, the pink and gold barricade versus the gold and blue barricade. Mm-hmm. Why? So I'm glad you're not going to do anything willy-nilly like that, because really,
I won't say it'll never happen, but we're trying really hard to avoid it whenever we can.
Yeah, but you're not going to do anything goofy like that. Like, I'm guessing they're going to be functional repaints. Like, you're not going to, like, let's just throw some gum at the wall. Hey, there's a color, and there's a color that we can use there too. So
we'll save those for exclusives.
So it sounds like even if we don't get the stretch goals, that there's a potential for maybe a second Kickstarter down the line. And I mean, what are your long-term goals here? I mean, is this is hopefully something that like Boss Fight and Rodder, where we're going to be seeing these 10, 15 years down the road?
Yeah, and we did a presentation at Joe Fest, and what we decided was, because a lot of people asked us to record it, and that just didn't work out. But what we decided was we're going to kind of drip stuff out as part of that, right? Because you'd be amazed how hard it is to actually generate the stuff to go on social media, how much time that takes. So we decided we're just going to drip that stuff out over time. Everybody will get to see it eventually. We've got the social media piece for every week, because we're trying to keep a weekly or at least every other week social media post going. But we're going to drip that stuff out. That first initial Kickstarter, that's the ground floor. Right. That's the foundation, right? And once that's in place, we can then start to build off of that. And we have lots of other stuff we want to do. That's our floor, really. We have another 2 series that are at least as big as the Kickstarter in mind that we'd potentially like to do post that. We've got a brand Bible right now that's 90 pages long with the story and the characters in it.
Wow.
Yeah. Cool. So, I mean, fantastic. There's a third faction we want to introduce. We'd really like to do vehicles at some point.
That was going to be my next question.
Yeah. So we've got big plans. Our plans also extend beyond Longbow. There are 2 other brands that we currently have in development, in early stages of development, that would be post Longbow. And we won't go too much into those right now. But, we want this to be an ongoing thing. We think there's a market there for O-ring guys, even, as there are other O-ring projects, even if Hasbro brought O-ring Joe back, we just see that as a complementary product.
Right.
Nobody's not going to buy our stuff because they're buying somebody else's. And that's, we want to make a good product, and we want to build on that year after year. And, lots of times in the beginning, right, you might be on an every other year schedule, just because that's the way Kickstarter and then factory, production works. But maybe we get to a point where every year we're releasing 18 figures or something. That's where we want to get to.
Wow. Cool.
So that's kind of what I was hoping to hear, is just like, okay, this is the ground floor, and we got a lot of stuff planned.
And as you build, right, in the beginning, like everybody else, we're starting from scratch here. We don't have a lot of extra money. We're being very, very efficient in what we're doing. As we get bigger and we start to build up some additional funds, we can get more unique in that tooling. We can, do different things like vehicles maybe someday. That might be a bit off, but that's where we're headed.
And I'd just like to remind people, it's starting from scratch. It's you guys that make this happen. These guys got the plans, but it's the crowdfunding. And I've been saying this for the last couple of years. Crowdfunding is the future of 3 3/4 inch toys. Nobody's making decent 3 3/4 inch toys anymore, except like maybe Joy Toy, that haven't been crowdfunded. So if you guys want this stuff, it's you guys that got to support this line. And I know you guys want it as much as I do. You've got to help these guys get it started, because I mean, listen to this, man. It's going to be like 1983 all over again in a couple of years. You're going to be able to go online and be able to get a whole wave of O-ring action figures that are going to be just as cool as the original G.I. Joes. And I can't wait for that. That's going to be amazing. And did I see that there's gonna be like swappable joints? And
No, I think that's the Strike Force Alpha figures. Ours will be as slavish as we can be to traditional construction. Okay. That's part of our game plan is we want that nostalgia piece. And we are going to stick as close to that. The one thing, actually, I guess I should take that back. The one thing that is different on ours, and is technically swappable, is we have added wrist articulation. So we added a peg and then a swivel wrist. And the hands will be made out of a flexible material.
Oh, thank God.
Yeah, not super flexible, right? Still somewhat rigid, but flexible enough that you're not going to snap the thumbs.
Yeah, I was going to say, no broken thumbs, no broken fingers when you, I don't know, try to put the figure's bazooka in his hand.
Yeah, I'm just going to say no zap thumb.
Damn it. The movable wrists are good too. Better posing with the rifles. Because you pick up the spearhead figure and he's got that big gaudy hunting rifle, which is cool, but if he had movable wrists, he might actually be able to hold the front of it up a little bit. So I like.
And that was John's design. John, do you want to talk a little bit about wrist articulation? And
well, it was one of those things that we said we didn't want to change the look of the figure at all. And a lot of times, even now with the modern style figures, somebody like Joy Toy comes in and they put thigh articulation in somewhere, or the extra neck piece on some of them. And that starts taking away. It may work on some characters, but if that's your buck for the whole line, that's going to take away from the look of the aesthetic of the figure. Marvel Legends runs into it all the time. They decide to put a mid calf joint for a boot. Well, if you put that on on Cyclops, it would look ridiculous.
Yeah.
Or you tried to do a straight across line on Wolverine where he's got the pointed boots, that just wouldn't look right. So what we could do though is we could do something with the hands. And I had suggested that we kind of look at the 12-inch figures that came out in the mid 90s and the way that the head swaps onto the neck post, that design, with a little heat, you can pop that right off there and swap heads. And you could easily take a very, very articulated 21st century figure and pop a Hall of Fame Cobra Commander head on it, and it snapped right on. It was the same joint size and everything. So basically that is the approach I took. I took it just kind of a mushroom kind of pop on part that we could sell a pack of gloves and hands later. You could swap out gloves and hands if you wanted. That way you could have, when you do your repaints, it's a lot easier just to use a different set of gloves. That makes it feel like a totally different aesthetic on the character. This character always wears gloves. This character never wears gloves. That kind of thing, So that was what I really wanted to do. And it's just a simple swivel joint, but it hides. When you look at the figure, the silhouette of the figure looks just like an old O-ring figure. There's nothing fancy there. There's a bit of a design, some design tricks you have to do to end that to where where the wrist joint will turn and not look bad.
Yes.
But that is, that's part of where we depend on sculptors and people like that to make sure that we follow that buck design.
Absolutely. Now I'm guessing one of the things that you said earlier is that, you had this like whole universe planned out, and in this first one, I'm sure there is if you give us just a a mental sneak peek, each one of you, of what you said. There was something that you guys wanted that's I want, what did we not get that we can make? There's one thing to each of you that you're this is the figure that I want in this. Give us a little bit of a mental sneak peek of, this is the figure that I'm looking for. A little backstory. What is it?
You go first, Sean.
Okay. This is fun for me. I actually kind of wanted two things, and I managed to put it into one character. And that was, I wanted a medic that was not afraid to use a gun. All right.
Right.
Not only is he not afraid to use a gun, he is really good with a gun.
Ooh.
And I also thought we didn't get any Air Force Special Forces. I mean, if you're in the Air
Where's
Force,
the
you must be a
pararescue?
pilot. So I really pushed for a pararescue character
Fantastic.
that was really good with a pistol, and Troy came through with the design on it. I did some early sketches and said, I'm kind of thinking this, and he said, well, we've got this, and we could do this, and
I'm sold.
And that is one of, I don't know if we've released artwork of that character yet, but he's definitely in the Kickstarter as an unlock. But that was one of the ones that I really wanted. I wanted a medic that was willing to shoot, and I wanted a pararescue in there.
Fantastic. Yeah, that's one of the ones that I did one custom a long time ago and wasn't real happy with it. So I just haven't gone back to that. If I had you ask the people that, like, in our age group that really was very military centric of what their dream job was, and it's always like SEAL. I want to be a Navy SEAL or a Ranger, and mine was always pararescue because I've been a medic for almost 22 years now, and yeah, pararescue was my dream job. So, Troy, tell us about what you are just like slathering over here.
I wanted more. I wanted more. I wanted more good guys. I wanted more bad guys. I wanted more trooper types. I wanted more kinds of enemies. I just wanted more, right? But as far as a single product, like there are a lot of figures where it's like, oh, hey, I want this thing, so we put it in, and hey, I want this thing, and we put it in. So really, I mean, I can't say that there are very many of the figures, even in what we have planned, that aren't something I wanted. As far as thing that I want the most right at this moment, I want to get to vehicles, and I want to do a little fighter jet that we can do as a good guy jet, and then we can deco in black as the MiGs from Top Gun. Because I really need something for my Sky Striker to shoot down, and that, that.
I'm gonna say the MiG from Firefox myself. The MiG 31 from Firefox is what I want to see.
But
keep that in mind for Wave 2 of the vehicles, guys.
Yeah, but that's that's the great thing, right? As we've talked about these, like, there's a lot of stuff, it turns out, that I want. When we really get down and start writing things up, like, oh, I want this thing and I want this thing. And when we started talking about the Soviets, it's like, when we started talking about Soviet vehicles, I was like, well, we need a T-72 tank, and we need a Hind helicopter, and we need this thing and this thing. Some of those things may be, way down the line, but, those kind of conversations about, wouldn't it be cool if we had this, or, if we could get this thing. Those kind of things.
Or characters that we can have work alongside the October Guard, and vehicles for the October Guard. They always had that cool 6-wheel vehicle in the comics, and
that is cool.
Book number 2.
Hasbro never even gave us anything that we could pretend was the October Guard vehicle.
That's a vehicle we should have.
It is.
I love that vehicle. I love that.
Why do I have the feeling that you've already got that planned out just a little bit?
We've talked about a lot of things. So
a lot of things,
and it, like we said, we want this brand to grow, right? Not everything can get done right at the beginning. And we'll explore, and again, we have those other brands that we're working on, and sometimes we have conversations about, hey, this thing might work on Longbow, and then it might also work as this other thing on this other brand. And trying to plan for the future that way. There's just a lot of thinking that goes into these things. Lots of pieces, lots of different moving parts that you have to consider. And unfortunately, it does take up a lot of time figuring out all those details, but we think it'd be worth it in the end.
Absolutely. I think it will be too. What are you looking at, packaging? Is it going to come on a card like G.I. Joe, or are you going to do it kind of like a window box, like boss fight stuff? Or are you playing that a little too close to the vest right now?
No, let us throw this at you. What do you think if figures came carded, right? Because we're going for that nostalgia feel.
Yeah.
But what if exclusives came bagged? like with a bio card, like an old mail away.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Oh hell yes. Hell yeah. I open all my toys anyway, so I don't need that crap in the package. So if I can just rip open the baggie and have the toy out, yeah, I heartily approve.
Yeah, we've talked about packaging and you know, we're looking at a couple of different options. That is a little bit dependent on the factory, because they do prefer to do things a particular way. Not that we can't do something different, but again, we're trying to be fairly cost effective here.
Absolutely.
So we need to balance everything. It's, you know, it's one of those deals where we make, you know, we want to stick to vintage. We'll make a change when it makes sense to make a change. But you just got to balance all those decisions against when is it worth it, when is it not worth it. So
absolutely.
Yeah.
When you start looking at how shipping costs are going up too, you know, when the factory wants to do a cradle to the grave product where they want to not only do tooling, but they also want to do final packaging, then you have to think like, how much more is that packaging going to cost me to ship it versus how to do it. So that, and things may settle down, you know, by the beginning of next year, and that's what we're hoping for. But all of that will, you know, be figured in. I think we'll have to consider those things. But that hasn't stopped us from designing to plan for both ways.
Fantastic. That's awesome. Yeah, I hadn't really thought about that, but yeah, that really, when you do stop and think about all the moving parts and how each little thing that you add into this suddenly creates an exponential cost to put that in there. And yeah, just getting started doing that ground floor. Do you want to? I can see the truth in it, as they said, and like I think Dune, of like, let's just keep it simple. Let's get it out the door. Mm-hmm. Once we get it out the door, once we have a foundation to build on, then we can go for it. We just need to get it out.
Yeah.
So I'm just curious, what kind of weapons are the Longbow guys going to have? Are we going to see weapons that we never got in the Joe line, or are you creating? Are they going to be realistic, or are they going to be a little more fantastical? I'm just curious here.
We're starting with some realistic stuff. We are going to play with that, and we are going to do a few more unique and kind of sci-fi designs as we move forward. In the beginning, this first series is very very Cold War kind of unique weapons, and John and I both have done a lot of research on Cold War era weapons development and what was kind of cutting edge in the 70s and 80s.
Lots of and Warsaw Pact items as they talk about on the
and like you said, not just in the States, right? What were other, you know, NATO nations developing at the time, right. You know, that kind of stuff. So you know, we're starting with that. As a general rule, I will say that we're keeping the Soviets fairly realistic, just because I think a lot of people want some fairly realistic Soviet equipment. That you know, you will always be able to sell AK-47s or AK-74s to 3 3/4 inch collectors.
They're still a big deal in the terrorism world.
They are. You will always be able to do.
It's on three different flags in Africa, so yeah. I think you're going to be okay with sticking a couple AK-47s.
You know, the Longbow guys, they are going to be a little more cutting edge, and we may play a little more kind of sci-fi with them. You know, they will not be as uniform as the Russian guys for the most part. They're going to be a little more unique because it gives them a little more character, and they're the good guys, and we want you to be able to differentiate those characters and their accessories, right?
Yeah.
A unique guy has to have a unique gun, has to have a unique backpack. Like that's a design kind of philosophy that we want to keep with. Like I said, there is that third faction out there. We may go in a slightly different direction with that. But we're not there yet.
Being teased like this.
We're not there yet.
No, I'm good with the tease. My brain's like, ooh, what have they come up with? But I'm more than content to wait and figure out what your plans are later.
I'm not, but that's okay.
Well, like Brian was saying, right? We have to get the ground floor done first. And then we can go back and say, okay, remember this thing we did? Well, here's how we want to do it different and bigger and better the next You know, and so in the beginning, yeah, we're going to stick fairly realistic. And I think we've shown a couple of guns online, and we'll keep showing. We've got some 3D prints of some of the early gun models. And those, when you see those are fairly realistic.
Yeah, I've seen a couple of the pictures. And like I said before, we will have all of the social media links, specifically the Facebook group, will be linked below. And when these guys do post, I do share it on my customizing page. So if you're following Go Figure Customs, chances are you're going to see the update there as well.
Thank you.
So I did hear backpacks then, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So one of the things that
what good's a soldier without a backpack?
Right? Yeah. Boy, no kidding. So that was one of the big things for me as a kid was accessories. I liked a ton of accessories with my stuff, but not so much where they couldn't hold all their stuff. So you guys, it sounds like, and I understand that they're, cost saving, guys aren't going to come with a lot of stuff, but it sounds like you've got some good plans for, like, accessories for figures. I think that's a huge component to any like military action line.
Sure. Well, they need that, right? I mean, that's part of the play scenario. They need gear, and they need, to be unique characters, they need unique gear, and they need gear. And one of the things that we talked about, we are not claiming that this is a 100% historically accurate line.
Sure.
Like it is not going to be. We want it though to feel real, and that's the conversation that we've had repeatedly. Is it's got to feel real. Might not be quite right, but it's got to look real. It's got to feel real. It's got to feel like something, like we said, that came out of an 80s action movie, right? It doesn't look out of place in that world.
In that era, yeah. We're getting real close to about an hour. Wanted to keep it real short, on not that we don't want to have you guys on and just like spill your guts about all of this, because this sounds fantastic, but we want people to watch the video. Yep. And it seems like the longer the video, the fewer people watch it. So we really want people to watch this. So we're going to kind of cut it off here. Again, thank you guys for joining us today. And just so everybody's clear on this, as they said, the Kickstarter is going to be sometime the beginning of next year. Both of these guys will be back on General Geekery after the Kickstarter goes live. So once you see stuff, start writing on questions, and we won't ask them for these guys. But they will be on the show again once the Kickstarter is live.
Yeah, we're softening the ground here.
Yeah,
so.
Yeah. And we're happy to come back in between. We're happy to come anytime you'll have us.
Oh, yeah. Oh, hell yeah. Oh, I love having guests on the show, talking to people, getting their perspectives on things, finding out more about what lights their geek up. So,
yeah, we'd be happy to have you back and not talk about your project at all, honestly.
Yeah.
So, yeah, we will definitely have you guys back on again, not only to talk about Project Longbow, but to not talk about it as well. So we would definitely love to have you guys back on. JD, you got anything else?
I was just curious, growing up, who was each of your favorite Joe and your favorite Cobra? Just
we gotta ask.
Not even not necessarily figure, just character. Just curious. I forgot to ask earlier, so
yeah, it's just like a stock question to get you in the room, I think, on our show.
Who's going first?
You go first.
Okay. Even though my first Joes were Breaker and Flash, my favorite character, like just going by their file cards and how they appeared in the card art, was Flint. I loved him. I loved the backstory.
Yes.
On the back of his card, that rescue mission just sounded like, why hasn't a G.I. Joe movie started with that story right there to introduce us to Flint? Like, that would have been
such a great question.
And my favorite Cobra, really, this is a crazy story, but it's Scrap Iron. And it's because when I was really young, I saw that Airborne and Scrap Iron had similar parts. So I was onto that like very early. And then when I found out later the history of that figure and how it ended up becoming scrap iron, I just latched right onto it. But as a kid,
how
I
it
just
was going to be a
loved his
mountain
design.
climber, and then it wasn't. Yeah,
he was going to be this guy right here.
John's got. Yeah, he's got the color studies for that figure, is what he's pointing at.
From Ron.
That's cool. That's cool.
So scrap iron, I thought he was cool. I loved the figure because he was Cobra Blue and he looked like he fit in with the Cobras, but it didn't really explain how that worked. So I had all kinds of ways that scrap iron fit into the story for me until, and then reading the comics, of course, he was a little different than I imagined, but
he killed the Softmaster.
Yeah, he did. But yeah, those were my favorite Joe and my favorite Cobra growing up.
Okay.
You don't hear scrap iron. I think that's the first time anybody said scrap iron. Huh?
Yeah, I like how I like the sculpting on him. I like how, and Airborne is similar. I like how lean they are. They are way beyond the chunky figures that we got later. I just like the way those figures looked, and I thought scrap iron was an excellent figure. The sculpting detail on him is awesome. So
yeah, it is. Troy.
So my favorite Joe when I was little was Shipwreck. Shipwreck was my first figure. And like I said, I was born in '83. I was a little bit behind some of the other Joe guys. So the cartoon really influenced me more than comics, especially when I was a kid. And he was a much bigger player, obviously, in the cartoon than he was in the comics. So I loved Shipwreck, and he was my favorite until the early '90s when the local video store had G.I. Joe the movie that you could rent. Okay. And it was the only time I could watch G.I. Joe on demand. And then Lieutenant Falcon was my guy because I could go rent this G.I. Joe movie and watch it anytime I wanted. That was life-changing at the time.
I watched that movie so many times. My dad recorded it off the TV in the first TV broadcast, so I had the commercials. I watched it hundreds upon hundreds of times when I was a kid. I didn't care.
I was in Afghanistan. I got a care package from JD. I opened it up and it was a bunch of candies and toys in the G.I. Joe movie.
Oh, that's right. I sent you the DVD, didn't I?
Yep.
That's awesome.
That was a while ago. I forgot about that.
And then your Cobra figure there.
So Cobra one, this is going to be a little weird for people. It's '93 Mindbender, which I can remember the day I got it at the Westminster Mall, at the KB Toys in the Westminster Mall in Denver. I bought it with my own money, and it had the Viper legs, and I had not had the Viper as a kid. I had missed out on that. And I remember just thinking that figure was fantastic. I was 10 years old at the time. So I was right. I know, it's neon colors. No, I was the demographic for that. I loved the Street Fighter stuff. I loved Star Brigade, but that '93 Mindbender, it was also my first Mindbender figure.
Brian, we are so having them back on the show.
Yeah, so it was.
Wow, this just became a much bigger conversation.
Yeah, 93
possibly have today.
'93 Mindbender and that Ninja Force Snake Eyes were my first two of those two characters. As crazy as that sounds, I was way behind, but that Mindbender, like there was something about that packaging art and that figure that I was just like, yeah,
93 Mindbender is 100 times cooler than version 1, and I don't give a damn what anybody says. Version 1 is a goober.
Yeah.
Well, I'm quite satisfied. Yes, sir. Let's have them back on the show. Thank you.
So, Troy, John, thank you for joining us today. Everybody, please do that fun social media stuff. Like, share, subscribe, comment below, ask your questions. And I just got a text message as Troy was saying his favorite character is Shipwreck. We can now reveal what Marauder John told us a couple weeks ago, because they have the number 15 stretch goal for the Marauder Task Force Vietnam era, and it is a sailor that looks not unlike Shipwreck.
It's nice. It's very, very nice.
It is.
Yes, it is.
We could not reveal that on the show. John swore us to secrecy for that. That was the hardest thing I had to do, was bite my tongue on social media.
Yeah, after the recording ended, he showed us some of the stuff that was coming up and told us about some of it. We're like, what? So
now we can we can throw that out there.
All right, that's cool. Oh, that's so cool. So wait, so that would mean that they unlocked the nurse then?
I didn't see. I think they might have just announced the figure.
Okay. All right, so it must be pretty close to being unlocked then. Okay, cool.
I didn't read the whole email. I just looked at it and said, "Oh, they just announced the sailor." So once again, everybody, please do that on social media stuff. Like, share, subscribe, comment below. And thank you for watching. John, Troy, thank you for joining us, and we look forward to having you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
Thanks, guys. Really appreciate it.
Absolutely.